Hi, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Tonight we're going to be talking about what you do once you buy these fancy yarns. So we've been talking about indie dyed yarns and local yarn store brands. Most of those, when you buy yarn like that, and even some of the fancier Lion brand yarns, come in a hank like this. And so they're all wrapped up like this, and you get them home, and now what? So we were going to talk about this last week, and we ended up spending a lot longer talking about the local yarn store brands and a bit about shawls. And so I wanted to touch upon this topic. I also have another Leither Co. box to show you guys. That's that crochet subscription that I pay for, and I've just been sharing those on stream. So if you want to see those, we'll be unboxing that. And then there will be time for any questions and comments that you have. A while back, we had a chat overlay on the screen so you could see the live chat popping up as the stream was happening. So that stopped working because YouTube made some back-end changes, and so we got that working again. And so you should be, if you're watching this live, you should be seeing it pop up on the live chat as well as on the video. If you're watching this later, now you'll be able to see the live chat without YouTube's actual live chat having to work. They seem to have broken something with that because I can't get it to turn on for us at all. So I'm going to check the comments and then we'll get started. So mostly it's just hellos, and so hello to everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight. If you have comments, questions, anything you want to talk about, go ahead and throw that in the live chat, and we'll talk about that during the stream. I'll keep an eye on those throughout. So, first things first, when you get a unit of yarn like this, we call this a hank. A hank is just this twisty shape. When you untwist this, you get a big ring. So this is Monostel Uruguay. It's Alegria, and the color is a Cerro. And normally there's some sort of label or wrapper attached to this, but I don't know where this one's went. But anyway, so you get a chunk of yarn like this, a hank of yarn, and you need to do something with it. There's a number of different options. People put them on the backs of their chairs. They have their, partner or husband hold it like this, and then you have to hand unwind it. And it's actually a lot trickier than it sounds because the yarn goes up and down, and it'll tend to pop off of your hands. I've seen all sorts of other options, but there are some real options, things that you can purchase or make. And there's two different parts that you need to make a nice cake of yarn. Yeah. So what we're aiming for here is a cake of yarn, and those look like this. So this is a center pole cake. So the idea here is that this one's tied nicely so that both ends stay together. But so you can pull yarn from the center and work out of the center of the ball, or you can pull yarn from the outside and work from the outside of the ball. And I use sort of ball and cake interchangeably here, but in this case I mean this flat on the top, flat on the bottom shape where the yarn is laid nice across here. So this is what we're trying to make. This is sort of the ideal. Alternatively, you can just ball up the yarn by hand. And that's literally ball of yarn. I don't typically hand ball my yarn, so I don't have any handy to show you. Occasionally, if I get to the very end of a cake, I will ball it back up, just because it will start to collapse a little bit. Also with the Karen Pantone yarns, those I did hand ball up because they were too little to put on my yarn winder.
To start off with, can you work from a hank? Like, why do you need to do any of this?
So my husband's saying, why are we doing this? I should back up a second and say, why are we doing this? So this yarn right here, you can't work from. You could try really hard, lay this out really nicely on a flat surface like this, and start unwinding, and you might get a couple of wraps, and then things just go badly. And I can't even really tell you why they go bad, but the yarn will just tangle on you. It's never going to stay exactly like this, and it's not going to end well, and you'll end up frustrated. You won't want to use yarn like this. When you buy yarn from a big box store, or even some of the local yarn store brands, sometimes you'll get a ball like this. And this is a center pull ball. It's a slightly different shape, but you can work from the outside or work from the inside of this. And these are usually a little bit loose, but you can totally use this yarn as it comes. You can also get what I would call a skein of yarn, and I usually refer to this shape as a skein. Some people call this a ball of yarn. This is also a center pull. You can dig around in here and find your tail. And you usually get what most people in the fiber arts community call yarn barf, where you get a whole chunk that will come out of the center here. And then you got to work and find your center and start working with this. But you can usually use this. I don't really know anyone who works from the outside of a skein. Most people leave the band on and work from the center until it's gone. This shape unrolls really weird and like wobbles all around as you're working with it, and it's not very friendly to work from the outside of this. Shawl in a ball used to come in this shape, and they have since switched to shawl in a cake, which is exactly the same yarn, but they made it a cake so that you could work from the outside, because it's such a loose, like a loosely spun yarn, that it just doesn't have any structure. And so when you work the center out of this, then it just turns into like a knotted mess. So I would call this shape a skein. I would call this a center pull ball, as opposed to a ball of yarn which doesn't have a center that you can pull out of. You have to work out the outside, like a hand-wrapped ball. And then I would call this shape over here, I would call this a cake. And some people use some of these things interchangeably. That's just how I distinguish. And I think a lot of the fiber arts community uses the same terminology. So this thing here is a hank that I've unwrapped. It's just a loop right now. So what you need is something to act as a swift. A swift just holds the yarn, doesn't do anything but holds it and keeps it from moving around. Like I said, people use the backs of their chairs as a swift. They use somebody else's hands to hold it like this instead of a swift, but you can just get a swift. So what I have in front of me here is an Amish style swift. It's a flat swift. It's got a crisscross. You can get these commercially made. This one my husband made for me. It's made of dowel rods and some oak and like a bearing in here to spin around. So, and what it does is you put the yarn on there and you can spin it. So I'll show you how I would do that. Looks like this is set much too wide, so I'm going to pull the pegs out. See if I can get this kind of even. You want them evenly spaced, or as even as you can, for the size of the hank. So this one's going to be a little bit too short, so I'm going to back these off this way. So what you do is you just move the pegs until they are holding the yarn pretty tight for you. What you don't want is the yarn drooping into in between so that it catches on the feet down here. I think I'm going to have to go out one extra on this one here. So, and I'm going to try and balance it, though I think I'm going to stretch the yarn too far to balance it. But anyway, so this is an Amish style swift. So from here, I think you can see this here, but around this gray yarn, I'm going to try and line it up here so you can see it zoomed in. Around this gray yarn, there's some blue thread. Oop, I popped that one. So this is just holding this hank from getting tangled. Most dyers do this, 1 for their own convenience and 2 for your convenience, so that you can untangle this yarn and use it in a ball shape. So this one's tied in 3 separate places so that you can get this all untangled. If it didn't have any ties, when you try and open it into a loop, you'll get some of these pieces over here, and then it'll tangle and it'll be a giant mess for you. So my advice to you is, once you've decided what you're going to be using for your swift, then you can remove these ties, but don't do it until your yarn is on the swift you're going to be using. So again, this is an Amish style swift. It goes on a tabletop. It requires quite a bit of room to be able to spin because it's big enough to accommodate the biggest skeins. So even though this is taking up a smaller amount, you can't shrink the size that you're spinning with. So I am going to switch to my umbrella swift and show you what that looks like. So I'm going to take this apart. Mine comes apart in a couple of pieces. Set this aside. And then this actually breaks down. I don't know if I can get it apart right now, but it does break down so that it's two pieces there as well. All right, so the other style of swift that you can get, and these come in wood or plastic or metal, various different materials, but they all open and close like this. This is an umbrella swift. Basically opens and closes like an umbrella. Kind of get the idea on the name here. What you do is you take this and you clamp it to some sort of flat surface, a desk, a table, a countertop, whatever you've got. And then, so I'm going to open the clamp up, clamp it to whatever surface you're going to use it on. And this particular model does not have a very good clamp. I spend a lot of time fighting with it. However, this model of umbrella swift was only, I think, $11 or $14 on Amazon. So it's a pretty minimal investment, and I don't have a lot of expectations for something that cheap. So it's actually done really well for me. I've probably been using this exact umbrella swift for like 6 or 7 years, and it's doing just fine. So it's fine. Like I said, the clamp could be better, but it's not terrible. So clamp it on, then you get your yarn, and you have to be careful not to do that, where your yarn gets tangled right on your umbrella part. But if you bring it down and catch the umbrella swift, like so, and then get it to behave, there it goes. All right, then you open it up, and just keep opening it until this yarn is held tightly but not like being ripped apart. So then it just spins like this, spins nice and free, and we move on to the second part of winding, which is the winder. So of the 2 pieces that I'm going to talk about, I think the swift is more important because I think it's much harder to deal with holding that yarn. Yes, you can get somebody to hold it, but then you've got to make them sit there and hold it for a while. You can put it on the back of the chair, but it still tends to sort of shift around and want to tangle on itself. I think having a swift that just holds it and spins and you can walk away if you need to is a really valuable tool. A yarn winder or a yarn baller, which I'm going to move and show you here. I've got it clamped to my table. So this is my yarn winder. This is from Stanwood. This winder is pretty expensive, but you can get much cheaper versions. I used to have one. I gave it away in a yarn exchange. You can get ones that are just fine on Amazon. I think the one that I had was like it was from China. I think the name of the brand on it was like House Sweetie or something. It was like all one word. But it doesn't matter which brand. There's a whole bunch of them that are like $14, $15 in the US. You can get them shipped prime. Like I said, this one's my Stanwood winder. There are some cheaper versions of this style of winder. So some of them just spin and wrap yarn. This one has this arm that like lays the yarn down nicely. It does make a really nice ball of yarn. But again, this one's a little bit more of an investment. So this is the one that I'm going to use tonight. I'm going to clamp it back to my table here. I don't think you can see me using this, but okay. All right. So I guess you can see. All right. So I'm going to clamp this guy down. All right. All right. So this is clamped down. This guy's clamped down. Can you hand me, I think my sewing scissors are right on the corner of the desk. No? They might be in the bag behind you then on the floor. I don't have scissors with me. Yeah. So these are larger scissors than I'd normally use to cut yarn, but I don't have my my little snips in my bag right now. So I'm going to go through and I am going to just carefully pull the yarn away from the hank and get in here and snip these. These are just the little ties that are holding the yarn together. So this one actually ends up being the ends of the yarn. One of the things that's really difficult about teaching you to cake up or ball up yarn is that every dyer ties their yarn slightly differently. So this dyer has their yarn held in two separate places by contrasting threads. And then this spot here, they ran the tails of the yarn through and tied them to each other. So that's one way. I've seen dyers use take 100% wool yarn and they tie it with acrylic. And so it's really obvious. They use a totally different weight of yarn and it's really clear what doesn't belong. I've also seen dyers who use the exact same yarn that you're working with and they tie it and it can be really difficult to tell what you're doing. But generally there's something tied with a knot in the middle and you're pretty much always safe just cutting this knot. And I've never had a problem doing that. I don't want to say you're 100% safe because maybe somebody does something weird, but never had a problem just cutting the knots. So this one I already broke the knot on. I'm just going to pull it out. So you can see my yarn's now free. I don't know why this is the case, but one end of the yarn always pulls free much easier. And it's not always the one you expect. So this one's kind of wrapped behind the back side. This one's coming towards the front. But what I do is I start by unwrapping. And if it looks like it's going to cooperate, I will string up that end. I'll show you the other end. So if I start with this one, I get to this point and it's kind of fighting me. And I don't know, like I said, I don't really know what the deal is. One end always seems to unwrap better than the other. So I'm going to just lay that one back down. I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to string it up. My yarn winder has a guide right here. And then again, it's got this arm that lays everything down really nicely. I'm going to string through that. And then across the top, you take kind of a nice long tail and you lay it in these grooves. So a cheaper yarn winder will usually have still a guide like this, but not this piece over here. It will still have a cone like this and grooves that you lay into. You could just take this yarn and start handballing it up as well. So it's totally up to you. This is just one way of doing this. This is a good yarn winder with an inexpensive swift. You can get more expensive swifts made of wood. Or you can get the Amish style. The Amish style takes up a lot more room on your table, so I'm using this one just to get it all on stream. But there's a number of different options, but I'm going to show you this one, and I'm going to go ahead and start winding this. So this is just a sort of manual procedure here where you just need to start wrapping. And your ball will just start growing. It gets pretty small to start with, and then it'll just start growing larger here. So you just go ahead and work like this and just keep wrapping. If you go to a local yarn store and you purchase yarn from them, they usually have these tools available to use. So they'll usually have some sort of swift and some sort of winder. Most stores will wind it for you. Some of them will ask you to wind it, especially if it's a busy store and they just have a hand winder. They'll just set up the winder off on sort of a side cabinet a lot of times, and they'll just ask you to wind your own yarn. Some have a limit to how many that they will wind for you. Just depends. I stopped and so it caught here. I'm just going to untangle it here. I just wanted to slide over so that I could get a better angle for my arm. But like I said, most places will provide you the tools to do this. Some places will provide you, will actually just do it for you. And then the very rare place doesn't have the tools and won't do it for you. So I don't think I've ever been to a local... I take that back. I've been to one local yarn store. It was very small, and yarn was not their primary business. They carried some indie yarns, but it was not the main portion of their crafting business. They did a lot of cross stitch, and they did not wind for you. Did not have a swift and a baller on site. But it's not usually a big deal for me. I have my own at home. So one of the nice things about caking up yarn like this is that you get a feel for how the yarn is going to work up. You can also get a feel just by unhanking the yarn and noticing. So it's a big loop. I'm going to stop this for a second. So you've got a big loop here, and you can see that this blue is all on one side. Well, as I'm unwrapping, you see I've got gray, dark gray, a little chunk of blue, and then gray, white, a whole bunch of gray and white, little chunk of blue. And so this is going to work up in big chunks of gray, little speckles of blue, big chunks of gray, little speckles of blue. Versus a gradient where if I was pulling this off and it was just, say it was going red to purple, red to blue to purple, and it would be red, 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 and then sort of fading into the next color, and then all of that color, and then sort of fading into the next color. That would be more of a gradient style. And you can tell that whether your stripes are here in a chunk like this, or whether your stripes are a section, a section, a section. So you can get a feel. Sometimes at a store, they don't mind if you unhank the yarn or untwist the yarn and look at the whole hank. So you can tell if it's a gradient yarn or a speckled yarn, and sort of make a decision on whether that's the yarn for the project that you're working on. So I'm just going to twist this guy up. If there are any questions about anything, about winding or yarn or crochet questions, go ahead and throw those in the live stream, and I'll try and answer those while I'm going. So, yeah. So I'm just trying to get this guy done. I'm getting a lot of wrapping on the top that I'm not thrilled about. I may end up actually rewinding this. I'm not sure. Might just because I keep stopping and starting here. But anyway, so usually when I do this, I'll buy a whole bunch of yarn and I'll decide not to have them do any winding at the store. There is some debate, and it depends on how tightly you cake your yarn. Some people claim, out of yarn. All right. So some people claim if you leave your yarn in a caked like ball like this, that the tension is different on the outside than it is on the inside. And so when you work it up, your tension might be a little bit different and you might end up with sort of a weird project. I've never had that problem personally, but it is something that people do warn you about. If you leave yarn caked like this, that you might end up with that problem. I don't think it's true. I haven't had that problem, but it is something, I guess, to look out for. I guess it might be more of an issue if I was putting a whole lot of tension here and wrapping really tight. So normally what I do when I take my yarn off of here is I'll slide it up about this high, and then I'll fold the label up and shove it in the center. I never use my cakes, I guess I shouldn't say never, but almost never use my cakes from the center. I always pull from the outside because I don't like when you work a part of the ball and then the outside starts to collapse on you. If you work from the outside to the center, you'll always have a nice ball all the way to the center. So at this point, I usually take my label and shove it in the center. I fold it up into a little ball and shove it in here, and then I pull this all the way off. And then the ball will sort of collapse around your fingers here and sort of fill out the space here. So you can see the whole center of the winder, sort of like that space that it was taking up, sort of disappeared. And you get a nice cake here. So somebody's asking... So somebody's asking if you handball the yarn, if I've got any tips or tricks for that. So let me see if I've got something I can handball here. All right, I'll just use this guy. So sometimes you'll buy a yarn like this and you can just use this from the center, but there may be a reason to reball it up, especially if it's something. So this is just a pretty basic acrylic that's not really going to tangle. If you got something like Lion Brand's Shawl in a Ball, and it was really, really loosely like packaged and looked like it was a big risk for tangling, you might want to ball up that yarn. If you don't have a yarn winder, you could just handball it. So normally when I handball yarn, I start by wrapping a whole bunch around my fingers. So I get a really good center section. I pop that off of my fingers, and then I take the yarn and wrap it really tight around this piece here. And then I take my two ends and kind of hold them together and start wrapping like this. And then every few wraps, I turn and change directions. And when I have to handball, this seems to work the best for me. If you go too long in one direction, your wraps, and I'll see if I can get it to do it here, your wraps will start, let me see if I can, your wraps will start to fall off one side. So if I just keep going and going, they'll get too big and they start to jump the ball over here. And then you got to kind of unwrap, and you've gone too many times in that direction. You can kind of back it off and change. And I just keep turning. You can turn 90 degrees, you can turn like 45 degrees, and just keep wrapping. Sometimes you can turn this way, and just keep changing directions before your yarn starts falling off one side. And that's the best I can offer you on handballing yarn. Like I said, I don't do it very often because I bought a yarn winder really early on. I just bought a cheap, like I said, like $14 yarn winder, and I started winding into center pull cakes pretty quickly. The cheaper winders don't make the most beautiful cakes in the world. It is one of those things where you sort of get what you pay for. And if you can afford to go with a fancier one, great. If not, you still get a totally functional yarn cake. So, yeah. This one certainly wasn't. Let's see. This one is, though. So, I'm going to take down the Swift here. Move back to the center. So this one was almost certainly made on my old winder, and you can see the wraps are bigger in between. It's not laid down quite as perfectly. Cake is a little bit spongier, and it's not quite as tall, but it's perfectly functional. It does the job. I can use it just like this. I can pull from the center if I want to, pull from the outside. I did notice when I pulled this yarn off of here, this one was done on the good winder, or the bigger winder. You can tell by the height of the cake and like just the uniformness of the top. Looks really nice. But like I was saying, I always tuck my labels in here, so I don't need to remember what any of my yarns are. This appears to be Red Heart Super Saver in, I think, pumpkin, if I'm actually remembering correctly. Pumpkin. So, that way you never have to try and remember any of your yarn colors. Your label is tucked safe and sound in the center of the ball, and you can work from the outside, and you've got it in there. And that way, if you only use part of the yarn, so if I just want to use this as an accent piece, I can work from the outside, and I still have my label, and the yarn is, you know, just as firm as it was before, and it's not going to fall apart on me. And all I do to put them on my little stands over here is just push the label out of the way, and then shove the stand through here. Yeah. So my husband's reminding me, he's helped me wind yarn in the past. I did have an issue with the older winder, the cone portion. So if I take this off of here, this piece here was a lot shorter, and my yarn would occasionally jump over the top and then get tangled, and you'd have to back it off a little bit. It was not perfect, but again, like I said, it was like a $12 or $14 winder from Amazon. It worked for me for probably 4 or 5 years and was still perfectly functional. I just upgraded. I got this as a birthday present from my parents, and so I got this one, and I gave the other one to a beginner crocheter that I knew online as part of an exchange. So I passed it on. It was perfectly functional. There's nothing wrong with getting a cheaper version to start out with, and if in the future you can upgrade. This one does a lot larger balls as well. Like I can wind, I think I can just about get an entire 300 gram Bernat blanket wound on here. Where the other one I would have to break it into smaller balls. So you can get a couple 100 grams on this thing. I think that it does a really nice job with, 100-gram fingering weight yarn. But it's a little pricier. So, like I said, this one was Stanwood. My old one was House Sweetie, was available on Amazon. There's the two different types of Swift. You can get an umbrella Swift or you can get an Amish Swift. An umbrella Swift takes up a lot less room. The Amish Swift, some people just prefer the aesthetic, but it does take up your whole tabletop. I personally don't notice a whole lot of difference in functionality. They just hold yarn and spin around. I do know that the Amish one seems to hold a little bit more tension because it weighs a lot more. So if I stop winding or change my pace in winding, there's a lot fewer changes, it seems like. I do tend to whack my hands on it a little bit more. But that's just like every time you go to stop it because you want to stop winding, it runs into your fingers and it weighs a lot more. So I don't know. That's just something, I guess, sort of a back of the mind thing. I'm going to take a look at comments and see how we're doing here. My phone apparently restarted itself. Can you tell me what the comment says? It totally restarted.
Zukow128 said you've helped me so much.
Oh, so just a thank you in the comments for the topics we're talking about. So thank you for watching. Thank you everyone who's out there watching, even if you're not commenting. If you like the video, make sure to go ahead and hit like. If you are not a subscriber and you'd like to see more content from us, please hit subscribe. If you are a subscriber and you don't seem to be getting notifications, we've mentioned this a couple times recently, but different people watch each week. It seems like YouTube changed the way they do the subscription. So you have to subscribe, and then there's a little bell that you've got to click, and then they changed the rules on the bell. So if you want all your notifications, you have to click the bell and hit all. Otherwise, you'll go to getting just personalized notifications. So if you want to be sure that you're getting the most notifications from my channel when we're going live, when we post new videos, hit subscribe and then the bell, and then make sure that you choose all so you get all the notifications. And even then, I'm not sure that everyone's getting all of the notifications. YouTube's got a lot of hoops to jump through, but I'm glad that those of you who are watching found your way here, and those of you who missed the stream should be able to keep track of the comments a little easier now that we've got them overlaid over the video. Yep. So on to the next thing. That's just kind of a little overview on how to turn hanked yarn into caked yarn or hand-balled yarn. So I'm going to take the winder off and I'm going to switch gears here. I've got to open the YouTube app again. The phone's up and running. Set all these guys aside. Move these scissors so I don't accidentally cut some yarn. All right. I don't know why my phone restarted. Okay. Check in here. All right, so Stephanie is asking a big box yarn for a nice ombre of rainy day shawl next. Okay, so as far as an ombre yarn, you've got a couple of options. I'm trying to picture the rainy day shawl offhand to know what weight you're looking for. In big box store brands, you've got the It's a Wrap Rainbow and It's a Wrap Sprinkles. Both of those come in a gradient yarn. Some of them have single color like ombre looks to them. Last week, it's a fingering weight. So It's a Wrap Rainbow, It's a Wrap Sprinkles would be options. Those are stranded yarns where you have to hold 4 thin threads together to make up a fingering weight. Last week we unboxed a Lion Brand yarn called Faye. It's 100% cotton fingering weight that's an ombre look to it. Lion Brand also makes a yarn called Ombre Life that comes in solid colors that are just so it's I think the one that I had was like light purple to dark purple, and so it just was a slow fade. That is also a stranded yarn. For a yarn that's not stranded, I like shawl in a ball or shawl in a cake. It's a little bit heavier weight, and it's very fuzzy. I've got it right here. It's more of a color changing yarn, so it sort of fades back and forth. So I've got blue to purple to light purple.
Why don't you define ombre for those of us who don't know what it is?
Yeah. So my husband's asking what ombre is. Ombre is usually a light to a dark, all of the same color, but different, I guess, saturation levels. So it would be, you could start all the way to white and just do a teeny tiny amount of purple, and then a little more purple, a little purpler, darker, 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 all the way to a really dark, dark purple. So ombre is, I guess, another word for fade. Some yarns don't go all the way from the darkest all the way to white. Sometimes you stop at like a light purple or, a light version of whatever color you're looking at. So in my head, I'm thinking of Lion Brand's Ombre Life, and the one that I own is purple. So that's why I use that example. This is not an ombre. It is a color changing yarn with some sort of ombre characteristics. So you can see here, it goes light blue, sort of a medium blue, bright blue, and then this really dark blue. So this section right here, I would call a blue ombre. You've got a purple ombre section here, really dark purple, medium purple, light purple, into a purpley pink, and then to pink. So that's more of a color change or a gradient effect. This whole thing is sort of a gradient because it's doing these slow color changes, but there's sections here that are ombre. Shawl in a Ball, though, has options that are just sort of white to light blue to medium blue to dark blue, and then sort of back to white, and they kind of fade back and forth. When I think of ombre, I usually think of a yarn that doesn't go back to the other color. So I sort of think of, you start at one color and you end with another color, and you fade the entire like saturation level from end to end. So it just goes white to light blue to really light blue to medium blue to dark blue, and that's it, all in like one shot, not back and forth. So with that being said, some of the colorways on, like I said, It's a Wrap Rainbow, It's a Wrap Sprinkles, Ombre Life. I'm trying to think of some other big box brands that have a nice fade to them, but are also available in a fingering weight yarn, and there aren't very many of them. I'll keep thinking. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know, but those are the ones that are springing to mind. Oh, and Faye. Faye is brand new from Lion Brand, and it is an ombre yarn, but it does go back and forth. Should be in the box over there. I think I have one ball, and I think it's purple. Might be blue. It's 100% cotton, which is a little bit different. So the next thing...
Is this then what you would recommend to try?
Yeah. So this is what I would consider pretty close to an ombre yarn. You can see the darkest blue is on the outside here, and it does go back to light blue on the very edge because it's going to start the repeat over. But I think primarily they're packaged so that that doesn't happen. So you can see a little bit better from this side. It's really light blue, medium blue, slightly darker blue, really dark blue. And this is a fingering weight yarn. It's 100% cotton. It's brand new from Lion Brand. I have not worked with it. But if you're looking for big box store, fingering weight, ombre yarn, this might be your best bet. It's also not a stranded yarn, which means that it is twisted and it's just one strand to work with. I do find that cotton can be a little bit tricky to get your tension just right. And so it might be fine for working with. It might fight you a little bit. That just depends on how you feel about cotton. But that's that. Let's see. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to show you, I got another one of these Leither Co. boxes. I know somebody recommended another crochet box, and I have not got a chance to look at that, but I did get another one of these. I've been sharing them on the stream as I get them and just opening them up. So I'm going to go ahead and open this one. Full disclosure, I opened this when I got it because I was excited, but I repackaged it up just the way it came so that I can share it with you guys. So, not affiliated with this. I pay for this. Not affiliated with the subscription. I paid for the box, and I just think they're fun to open and show you guys what comes in them. This box, I think, is $40 shipped. So with that, you get a monthly subscription. They do have cheaper options, but I'll show you what I got in this box, and then I'll explain a little bit more. So it came packaged up nicely with a sticker on top. Flip over here. So you get a hank of yarn. This is Dragonfly. It is a worsted weight yarn. It's 100% superwash merino. 218 yards in a 100 gram ball. So, one ball of yarn. Let's see. I'm going to go over here. You get a box here and a hook. The hook handles are hand turned by the, I guess, co-owners. It's a husband and wife. She dyes the yarn and does the patterns, and he turns the hooks. So you can get them in a wood version or a colored version. I like the wood grain, so that's the one that I go with. This is a 8 hook, which I think is like an L. But it's marked on the bottom as 8 millimeters. These feel really nice in your hand. I haven't used them too much, but yeah, the shaft portion of this particular hook, and I haven't noticed this too much with the other hooks, but at least on this one, the shaft portion of this hook is really short. So when you crochet, you never want to be tightening your loops on the throat of your hook. All that's going to create is really tiny loops that you can't work into. You should always be tightening your loops on the shaft portion. And so if you drew up more than, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 loops of this worsted weight yarn, you'd be running out of the shaft portion of the yarn, pretty quickly here. So I think I've got 4 loops here, and they're really tight on there. So you'd be running out of room on this hook to work comfortably pretty quickly. So probably not doing giant puff stitches or bullion stitches on here, but regular single crochet, double crochet is not going to be a problem, I don't think. So, 1 hook, 1 ball of yarn, and 1 pattern is what comes with the subscription. This month actually came with 2 patterns. There is an option here to do, there's only enough yarn to do one or the other, so it's pick which one you prefer. So it came with either a Dragonfly slouchy beanie or a Dragonfly table runner. Those are the choices here for the projects for this month. So this is the first month that there was a choice in projects. Generally, there's just one pattern with it. So this was something kind of different. And then in addition to a hook, the patterns, and the yarn, each month you get some sort of goodies. So this month there was a packet of soak. This is hand lotion. Soak also makes soap for blocking. So it's a no rinse soap that you can put into your blocking water, and then you squeeze all of it out and you can just block it. You don't have to rinse it out in another rinse cycle, and it's not all like itchy or anything later on. This is in their Pineapple Grove, and it actually smells pretty good. I had a bottle of soak in fig. It wasn't fig. No, yuzu. And I didn't love it. I thought I really liked it, and I bought a pretty big bottle, and turns out the like little 8-ounce bottle lasts like 4 years if you don't block everything every day. And I made quite a lot of shawls and blocked a lot of things with it, and it lasted me literally probably 4 years. And so it's a long time to have to smell something that you thought you liked and you ended up not. But the Pineapple Grove smells really nice. And then in addition to the hand lotion, there is also a dragonfly. So you probably noticed a theme here. This was dragonfly yarn. Both patterns were called dragonfly table runner and slouchy beanie. And so with that came a dragonfly stitch marker. And so they all coordinate, and there's kind of a cute little theme to the box. So.
Do you want to show the yarn closer again? Just kind of like
Yeah, so if you want to see the yarn a little bit more, you can see the colors are really nice. There's a lot of different shades of teal in here, a bit of green and a bit of blue, and I think they'll end up looking like a really nice, I probably will make the beanie, but I am not totally sure yet. Maybe I'll make the table runner. I'm not sure. Like I said, there's only enough yarn to do one or the other. I mentioned last week that Melbrigo makes one of my favorite worsted weight yarns, and that's the Melbrigo Rios. I showed a cowl that I made out of that last week, and so I definitely could get a skein of Melbrigo Rios and do whichever project. So if I do the beanie out of the yarn that was included, I can do the table runner out of some Melbrigo, or vice versa. So yeah, I just thought I'd share this with you guys. I don't know if you like seeing these unboxed. I get them once a month. Like I said, they're $40. You get the yarn, the hook, a pattern, and some sort of secret little goodie. I believe there are options to get just a hook, just the yarn, just the pattern. And I think if you see one that you really like that I think in most boxed here, you can go to her Etsy page and buy just the kit. So it's not a surprise because I've unboxed it and shown it to you, but you can go and get all of the things that I show you. So, again, not endorsed. I just like it, and I think it's fun to show with you guys. If you have a crochet box that you subscribe to and you'd like to see, if you have a crochet box that you subscribe to, I'd love to hear about it. And you can let me know about that in the live chat or in the comment section. I've looked at some of the knitting related boxes or the yarn boxes that come with knitting patterns, where they're not as crochet directed. I just don't knit. I don't have anything against knitting. I just don't know how. I basically can cast on and knit like 3 rows until I mess something up, and that's about as far as I get. So, at some point I'll probably learn to knit for real, but I've got so many crochet projects that I want to work on that I just haven't had the time to devote to actually learning properly. I'm going to check the comment section and see what's going on. Couple people just talking about the yarn, and somebody mentioned Knit Crate. It's one of the subscriptions that I looked at in the past too. They're just a little bit more knit centric, and so it's just a yarn surprise box for me, which is still nice. I did used to order Yarn Box, and I liked getting just random surprise yarn, but Yarn Box went out of business. They do some sort of weird like outlet sale that they've got going on their website, but other than that, they don't do the subscription, like the monthly subscription boxes anymore. But yeah, so if you've got, like I said, if you've got comments or things you want to talk about, crochet related or yarn related, go ahead and throw those in the comment section. That's really all I wanted to talk about this week. We talked a little bit about winding yarn from hanks into cakes. And then just wanted to show you that Leither Co. box. I did order a whole bunch of yarn from Premier yesterday. So I got some more DK colors because it was on sale. I got... What else did I order? I ordered a brand new yarn that they have called Bloom. And a couple of other things that were on sale. Some Premier Luna. And so when that all shows up, I'm not sure how long their shipping takes. But when all that shows up, I will be sharing that. I'll probably unbox it on stream and then work up some projects with that and see, do some reviews, see what kind of patterns we can come up with and share those with you. We didn't get the border tutorial out last week, but that should still be coming rather shortly. I did show off the interlocking shell blanket and the double arch border. So that tutorial is coming soon. Let's see, what else do we have? The Granny Spike tutorial came out. That blanket is just about finished, and we'll be doing a border for that as well. So should be some additional border video coming out. Yeah, so we'll be doing reviews on both of the yarns. So that's Premier DK Colors and Bernat Softy Baby Stripes. So those two yarn reviews should be coming soon. And then I have a whole pile of yarns that you guys have seen me unbox. So if there's something in there that you really want me to work with and let you know how that goes, something you're thinking about buying, please let me know in either the live chat or the comment section, and I'll try and move that up the priority list. When I order yarns for unboxings to show off to you, I tend to order more than I can work with in any reasonable time frame. So if there's one that you are particularly interested in, please let me know. Otherwise, you can always go back and check some of the old live streams. When I unbox them, I try and give you the best idea. I usually give you sort of my gut feel. So if a yarn is splitty, if it's got some sort of noticeable issue, try and be upfront and let you know about those. If I think it's going to be a really good yarn, try to let you know that too. So, just kind of, somebody asked if we've reviewed It's a Wrap. So I believe we've reviewed It's a Wrap, and then It's a Wrap Rainbow and Sprinkles. So there should be two separate videos. It's a Wrap is different than the Rainbow and Sprinkles. So the Rainbow and Sprinkles yarns are stranded yarns. You have to hold 4 strands together, and they work up like a fingering weight. Original It's a Wrap is a lace weight. It's a single strand yarn, and it's only made of 3 colors. There's no gradient effect. It's just you work all the way up to 1 color, and then it just changes colors. So they're a little bit different, and they have different uses, but they're both nice yarns. Or I guess I should say they're all nice yarns because there's 3 different lines there. But yeah, there should be review videos for It'll be two separate videos because Rainbow and Sprinkles are reviewed together. They're basically the same thing except for colors, and the Sprinkles yarn has like a speckled thread all the way through, where the Rainbow yarns don't. And that's really the big difference there is colorways. So, kind of just glancing through the list. My husband's putting links into all of the videos that I was just talking about. I'm not sure what the topic is going to be for next week unless that premiere yarn shows up rather quickly. Coming up pretty soon is Stitches Midwest. I haven't decided if I'm going to attend. I've gone the last probably 4 years, 3 or 4 years, and it's getting a little bit samey. It's the same vendors, it's been the same people, and that's fine, but it just isn't as fun to walk around and look at basically the same yarns from the same people year after year. Like, it's fun to go look at yarn, but I like to see some new people doing some new things. And at least for me, Stitches hasn't been like that recently. Whereas in April, we usually go to YarnCon, and YarnCon can be a little bit of the same, but they get different dyers in, and you get different people, and so you'll see different things here and there. This year I bought a lot of non-yarn things from YarnCon. We did a after YarnCon sort of stream where I showed all the things I bought, but I did buy a basket and some blocking pins, or some knit blocker type things. So there were some different things there that were not just yarn. So like I said, I haven't decided if I'm going to go to Stitches yet, but if you live in the Chicago area and you've never been to Stitches, I would absolutely recommend that you go to that and check that out. It's in Schaumburg every year. It's the first weekend in August, so actually next week, which I can't believe is a true statement that August is next week. But so it's at the Schaumburg Marriott Renaissance. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think the marketplace is only Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but you'd have to check their website. There's almost always a coupon that you can print out and get in for half price or free, depending on who's sponsoring the coupon. Yarn.com, which is Webs, usually sponsors some of the admission, and you can get in for free, usually with their coupons.
Is Knitting Universe the website?
Knitting Universe is who runs all of the Stitches. I've talked about the yarn shows and things like that before. There's a whole lot of fiber events that go on throughout the year. Sometimes you'll just see them as something sheep and wool. So Indiana has a sheep and wool, Wisconsin has a sheep and wool, Maryland sheep and wool is a huge festival. There's all sorts of big fiber events all over the country. So if you can go to those, they're really fun to walk around. Even if you don't buy anything, it's fun to just see what's going on in the fiber community, meet some other knitters and crocheters, and kind of just go and have a good time. Most of those events offer classes, and they don't necessarily have to be in just crochet and knitting. They often offer spinning classes, weaving classes, dyeing, and finishing classes. So how to block, things like that. So I don't know. I think they're a lot of fun. There's a lot of different events going on all over the country. I probably will go to Wisconsin Sheep and Wool again this year. That's sometime in September. We went last year. It was kind of a last minute decision. It was a really quick trip. We went, I think, on the wrong day. We had the week off. We were both on vacation, and we went at the end of the week. We sort of made a last minute decision to go on Friday, and I don't think the fair was really like in full swing yet. Basically, nobody was around. There were no actual sheep there. But I heard Saturday's attendance was enormous. So I think we just sort of went on a bad day to sort of get the full effect. But it was nice for shopping because we didn't have to like fight through the crowd. So, somebody mentioned that Runaway Needle Red mentioned that they've never been to a big event, that they hear that the yarn is pricey. So that is probably true. Mostly because the people at big fiber fairs tend to be indie dyers. However, I have been to several where there's a few booths where things seem to be a little bit cheaper and more reasonable. So I went to, for some random reason, the Alpaca National Show one year was in Peoria and not too far from us. And we went, and there were several booths where there certainly was $30 skeins of yarn, but there were several booths that had $6 and $10 and $12 skeins of yarn, of very, very nice alpaca. And so we bought some from here and some from there, and some finished items. I still think, even if you go and you don't intend to buy yarn, a lot of times there's interesting tools to look at. There's enamel pins that you can get from people. You can just walk around and touch and feel yarn and look at all of the pretty stuff, which is just fun to do. Sometimes it's just fun to shop.
There's usually show deals. Like, think about good for use mirror ball.
Yeah.
$8 usually.
My husband's also mentioning that there are often show deals. So, for example, Good For You, Paige owns Good For You, and she often runs a number of deals on particular yarns. So she'll have like a bag sale, like where it'll be all of one color on Clawda, and I think you usually get like 5 in the bag, and sometimes she has those for like $30, which ends up not being a terrible deal. Or she'll have her mirror ball, which is a lace weight yarn, and those will be on sale, or whatever she's running as a sale. So a lot of vendors do run show specials. Many of them will use the opportunity to get rid of yarns that either haven't sold online, or they've made too much of a particular color. And so there'll be, I'm trying to remember the name, I want to say it's like Knitting Notions or something like that, that at Stitches every year has sale, like clearance bins. And it'll be like 1 or 2 random colors that they made clearly way too much of. And I've got a shawl made out of their yarn. It's probably in this bin at my feet. It's blue and copper. This one right here. So I made this yarn. This was clearance bin yarn. I'm showing you the wrong side of it. This is the only shawl I've ever made out of Tunisian crochet. And it was a bit of a beast. I don't do much Tunisian, so, and it's all done in Tunisian short rows, but really pretty colors. You switch back and forth every row, and then these rows you do in little short rows, and you do a bunch of them, and then you do a whole big long row of like the copper color. So, this yarn, or this shawl, curled up really badly on me. Just because I probably wasn't using quite a large enough hook for the Tunisian crochet. But there you go. This is...
So how much were those, and how much do you think they were off sale?
My husband's saying how much were they. He wants me to try and guess how much they were and how much they were on sale. I want to say they were maybe $12 a skein, which would probably be roughly half price. So I probably got 2 for the price of 1 if I was guessing. I don't want to say for 100% sure, but I think that's about the right range there. So it really depends. You can go, you can look around. Things might be expensive. They might be out of the budget that you've set yourself, but you might go and find some interesting things. That's really where you'd see like new trends in yarn. Sorry, I don't want to run my shawls over here. There's a Bin O shawl at the bottom of my table here. So you'd see all the new trends, see what's coming. We've noticed that indie dyers have been following this trend of like themed yarns, and it's gotten a little bit boring in my opinion, where everybody has a Harry Potter and everybody has a Game of Thrones and everybody has this type of yarn or that type of yarn. And so you kind of go from booth to booth and you'll start to see some of the same yarns. And then all of a sudden you'll turn a corner and there'll just be an absolutely totally different, like stunning display of different yarn. And so, I don't know, I go to find the yarns that are different. I think last time at Stitches, the one that sort of blew me away, there was like a neighborhood yarn. And I just came around the corner and it was just set up beautifully and they had just every solid color. It wasn't full of like insane gradients or insane like speckly yarns, which I love, don't get me wrong. But sometimes it's really just nice to see a nice, beautifully dyed, most people would call solid, but I would say tonal, because usually hand-dyed yarn doesn't come out. This to me is solid. It's one color. There's no color variation, no nothing. A tonal yarn is a solid, but it's a little darker here and a little lighter there. I would say this is a tonal yarn here. This is from Insanity or Insanity. You've got the screen flipped the wrong way, so I can't see. This is a solid, but you can see there's a little darker section, a little bit lighter, medium sections, and so it isn't the same as making the shawl out of this, where it's flat and one color. But anyway, I like to go and just look at all the different types of yarn. I did also discover a number of booths that had beaded yarn, I'm sorry, not beaded yarn, but just beads. And so I did pick up some beads. Beads are usually a cheap thing that you can pick up, and there's lots of options that you can pick out. I want to say the tubes that I picked up were like $4 to $6, somewhere in that price range. So.
Stephanie Ann said she wishes her something similar to Flora. What is the place to look for those?
So Stephanie's asking, or saying she wishes that there was something in Florida. I'm sure that there are shows going on in Florida. Florida is similar to Illinois in that end to end is so long to get from one end to the other. So you'd have to find something a little bit more local unless you're willing to travel. There is a website. I'm trying to think. I want to say it's Knitter's Review. If you look for yarn show calendar, my husband's going to look and see if he can find. There is one website that seems to have the most comprehensive list of. Yeah, so he just put that link up. If you can scroll through month by month and see what's going on. They're from all over the world, primarily the U.S., but they have ones all over Europe and Canada and stuff. What I usually do is a Control F, which is find on the page, and then search for whatever state I'm looking for. So I'll usually check Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, because that's about as far as I'm willing to travel for yarn shows. But if you're near Florida and Alabama, or Florida and Georgia, or somewhere where you can travel to another state, you can check multiple states and see if there's something going on near you. I tend to have the worst luck, and I'll check that and realize there was something really close by last weekend. But Usually shows are done on an annual basis, and you can kind of put those in the back of your mind and try and remember to check a little earlier next year and go to those. But hopefully there's something on there that intrigues you.
She's right. There's really not much in Florida.
Yeah, he's looking. He's saying he's not seen much in Florida either.
I'm sure there's got to be some.
I guess there might not be much of a fiber community in, not a fiber community so much as like knitters and crocheters, but other than like the big commercial shows like Stitches, most of the shows revolve around animal fibers. So they're like around us. Like I said, I went to Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and it's a sheep show. Like it's for people bringing their sheep to show, but then there's a whole like 4 buildings full of yarn vendors, and some of them are selling raw fiber, but most of them are selling yarn. There might just not be many shepherds and alpaca keepers in Florida. It might just be too hot for big woolly animals, so maybe there isn't much. I don't know. We'll have to look into it a little bit more. If I find anything in Florida, out of curiosity, what part of Florida, south, central, northern, panhandle area, I can try and keep an ear out and see if anything comes up. There's also, so Stitches is not just limited to Chicago, that's Stitches Midwest. They run, I want to say like 4 or 5 shows, and a couple of them move around. So Stitches United moves around. I think it was in Texas this year, I think is where Stitches was at. So I guess there's potential that could end up in Florida or some other southern state. Trying to think what else moves around. Stitches United and some of the Vogue shows I think move around. Vogue was in Chicago one year. It's been in Minnesota before, so you could check and see if Vogue ever comes to Florida. Other than that, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there. I'm gonna check here. Okay. Yeah. So just Stephanie was responding again about that. I'll keep an ear out and see if there's anything in that area.
Stitches United was in Atlanta, Georgia this year.
Oh. My husband's saying Stitches. Yeah, Stitches United was in Atlanta, Georgia this year. So, but is already over at this point. And that one does move around. So I don't know if that means that they probably won't be back in that area next year.
That was the only yarn show in Georgia too, so it is. Oh,
it was he's saying that was the only yarn show in Georgia that's showing up. Knitter's Review is not they're not claiming to be a comprehensive list but it is the most comprehensive that I've seen. So it's not every show that could possibly be. It's just the biggest list that I know of offhand. Yep. So I think I'm caught up on comments. If you have any questions or anything like that, go ahead and throw them in there now. And otherwise, we're going to wrap up a bit. If you ever have questions and you want help on things like videos that I've posted, you need help with those patterns, or if you just have a yarn question or just another pattern question, anything knitting, crochet or yarn related that I can help you with, you can find me on Instagram and on Facebook, and feel free to direct message me or tag me in a post. Both of those platforms, you can find me at Experiments in Crafting. I also have a Twitter account. You can search Experiments in Crafting. You should find me. Again, I mentioned this earlier in the stream, but if you like the stream, please hit like. If you are not a subscriber and you'd like to get notifications about the stream, we've been pretty consistently streaming on Tuesdays around 8 o'clock, stream about 2 hours. And so if you want to get reminders for that or notifications when we go live, hit the subscribe button and then make sure to hit the bell and choose all rather than personalize. So that will get you all of the notifications rather than just a select few based on whatever YouTube's algorithms want to do that day. Kind of just check over here and take a look at the comments, and it looks like they're pretty quiet. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for the evening. Again, if you ever have questions, leave those in the comment section after the video is finished, and I will get to those and try and help you out any way that I can. I will see you all hopefully next week on Tuesday. And like I said, we should have some videos coming out soon here. So have a good night. See you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.